Dr. Buttram, thanks for your time. We appreciate it. Good to see you again.
Good to see you.
It's the fall for 1st of October as we're preparing this. We're going to get into the allergy season. What are the most common things people will have an allergic reaction to during the fall and winter?
Well, the most common thing in the fall, or at least the thing that receives the most publicity, is ragweed. There are several other weeds that are problematic during the fall as well, like marsh elder and pigweed. And then the other thing that we don't always consider is that molds can be an issue in the fall as well. Once we get into the winter and you've gotten past that first good freeze, pollens become less of a problem, but we have to think about things like indoor allergens. Dust mites are very common in homes, and you get a little bit more exposure in the winter because you're inside more, and you can get more exposure to indoor pet allergens. We also have one thing that blooms in the winter, which is mountain cedar, which will actually bloom from November through March.
How does the weather affect fall allergies?
The weather can have several different effects. If you've had fairly temperate summer and fall, you'll get more ragweed pollen than you usually do. The other thing that we consider is the winds. Higher winds in the fall will actually spread pollens a little further, and those pollens can travel for hundreds of miles. So even if we don't have a huge ragweed season here, ragweed elsewhere can affect this area.
You hear people say that sound as if they're congested or as if they're having problems. They say, do you have a cold? They say, no, I think it's just allergies. And the question is, how do you know?
Right. The big difference between allergies and a cold is an infectious process, and it's usually accompanied by fevers, body aches, severe fatigue, whereas allergies themselves are really just a stuffy, itchy, runny nose, itchy, watery eyes. You can also develop a cough and some wheezing or chest tightness if you're prone to asthma as well. But the allergy symptoms are not accompanied by fevers or that severe fatigue and the muscle aches and the common things that we associate with the cold as well.
With ragweed, mold, and dust in the air this winter, how can you tell which things to which you're allergic?
Without testing, you really can't tell. So the best way to find out for sure is to see a board-certified allergist, and they can test you with either skin testing, or if you're not able to be skin tested, we can do blood tests, although skin tests are much preferred. And that's how we can tell exactly what someone is sensitive to.
Why are some people allergic to things, say, like ragweed, which is pretty common, and others seem to be completely unaffected by it?
It's just whether you have a tendency to be allergic or not. And allergy is actually an immunologic tendency by which you are sensitive to specific things, and you've made IgE antibodies to those entities, such as ragweed. People who are allergic have IgE antibodies that then when they inhale ragweed pollen, those antibodies are cross-linked on mast cells. Mast cells spew out histamine and give you the characteristic symptoms. In people who don't have that immunologic response, they don't have any kind of issues with ragweed at all.
Allergy shots, a lot of people take them, but they take time to work, and my allergy symptoms are just killing me right now. What can you do to relieve my symptoms more quickly?
There are several things you can do. Probably the easiest thing is nasal saline irrigation, putting salt water in the nose. The thing you have to be careful about there is you don't want to get the wrong concentration, so you do want to go to the drugstore and get normal saline to wash out your nose. It's going to be the same concentration as your body fluids, and therefore you don't get fluid shifts that can make your symptoms worse. Past that, there are several over-the-counter medications. Antihistamines help primarily with itching, running, sneezing, itchy, watery eyes. Decongestants can help with nasal congestion as well. Those you have to be a little bit cautious, especially if you have a history of heart disease or hypertension. Those can raise your heart rates and raise your blood pressure. So in those cases, it's probably best to consult your physician before you try anything over the counter.
What's the difference between a decongestant and an antihistamine?
Okay. An antihistamine specifically blocks histamine, and the symptoms that histamine will mediate are itching, runny nose, and sneezing, itchy, red, watery eyes. A decongestant is something like Sudafed or phenylephrine. Those things really, all they do is dry up the nose. So they can decrease some of the swelling, but mostly the secretions in the nose, but they don't really do anything as far as itching, sneezing, or for that matter, a lot of the swelling that's there.
Are there common sense preventative measures that I can take to lessen the severity and just generally lower the impact of fall allergies on my life?
Sure. First thing is don't go outside at all. That's probably not all that practical. So things that are helpful. When you're outdoors, if you wear sunglasses, that keeps pollens and mold spores out of the eyes. That helps not only with eye symptoms but nasal symptoms as well. Number two, if you're driving around in your car, keep your windows up and your AC on and keep it on recirculating inside air. Keeps you from drawing things into the car with you. At home, even when it turns nice and cool, I wouldn't open things up to air out the house because that's going to invite molds and pollens indoors. If you have indoor pets that come in and out, washing them regularly will reduce the amount of pollens that they bring in. A few other things, if you know that you're very sensitive and you're going to be working in the yard, raking up leaves or mowing, wear a mask, and that will certainly help. And then the last thing, if you're going to spend a lot of time outdoors during the day, make sure you take a shower at nighttime. Otherwise, you're getting pollens in your hair and in the oils on your skin, and you're going to take all that stuff to bed with you.
Okay. A lot of people take allergy shots, you know, and then there's all the inconveniences attendant to taking allergy shots. Are there alternative treatments to twice weekly allergy shots?
Sure. There are certainly medications, which we've talked about a little bit. There are prescription medications as well, like intranasal steroids and intranasal antihistamines that are very helpful. If those don't do the job, though, and you really don't have the schedule to do allergy shots, you can do sublingual immunotherapy, which is where you place a drop under the tongue 3 times a day. It's very simple. It's safer than doing allergy injections, so you can do that at home. It's just that you have to remember to do it on a regular basis.
So you'd have an issue with compliance then, probably, if you...
Exactly. That's the only real drawback to doing the drops, is that you have to remember to do it on a regular basis 3 times a day.
I understand. Should someone with allergies consider going to a board-certified allergist as opposed to having the family physician try to deal with this? And at what point do you cross that line?
Selfishly, I would say everyone should see an allergist.
You got to eat too, right?
That's
you
exactly right.
I understand.
That's right. On the other hand, if the main time that you should consider seeing an allergist is if you've dealt with this for a long time and medications have not been effective, then it's probably time to see someone who's a little bit more specialized in the area. The other thing is, if you've taken medicines and they've been effective, but you're tired of taking medicines and you want to consider specific immunotherapy, either injections or the drops, then it's definitely time to see an allergist at that point.
Very well. Doctor, thanks for your time.
You bet. Thank you.